This life is better. It's more than a cliche. Jesus comes along on the scene, comes down from heaven, and he says, my purpose for showing up is so that you can have an abundant life. I said to the Lord this morning, what do you want me to do? The Lord said, talk to the people and tell them, let us reason together. Because sometimes you can preach fancy slogans, tell good jokes, be real excited, but the reasoning of the mind has not really clicked into what God's trying to declare to us. And so he said, tell the people, let us reason together. Let us listen to what God is really saying this morning, that we might glean some kind of understanding for ourselves, and we can make the decision that this life is better. Jesus says, I come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. And so it raises the question, well, what kind of life did we have before? And it's a question that you must be willing to examine in your own life. I know, for me, what kind of life I had. But the Bible kind of dictates and tells us things about ourselves. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8, go there for a moment. I'm going to teach this to you. Paul is writing to the Ephesian church, and he's telling them, listen, to be dear followers of Christ. Follow God as dear children, willing to submit. And he goes on down until you get to Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8, and he says, for you were sometimes darkness, but now are you light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. And I thought about this, and I said, we were sometimes darkness. And the text is not saying that you were sometimes in darkness, but he's saying that you are literally darkness. The concept of darkness means sinners. It addresses the kind of life that we had. Kind of life that the majority of people in our nation and in our world are living today. The Bible says Jesus came to the world, came to his own, and his own didn't know him. He was the light, and they didn't want to come to light. They wanted to stay in darkness. And I remember living that life. I remember living a life of darkness. I remember the drugs. I remember the drinking. I remember the sorrow. Because in darkness, you don't produce any good fruit whatsoever. That takes life for there to be fruit. There's no goodness in darkness. And I remember, if you could even reflect back on your own life, that in darkness there's no satisfaction. It's amazing to me how people try so hard to be satisfied. They do everything they can. They drink as much as they can to try to be satisfied. They have as many friends as they can get to try to be satisfied. They try to make as much money as they can so they can feel satisfied. But it doesn't matter how much money they make. They still seem to be unhappy. It always marveled me. And even when I wasn't saved, how someone that can be worth millions of dollars commit suicide. I'm thinking, what? If I had $1 million, I wouldn't commit suicide. That's because I didn't understand that we were darkness. Money doesn't do anything about darkness. Friends can't really help you when you're in darkness because they're in darkness with you. Relationships don't seem to work when both parties are in darkness because this party is dissatisfied and this party is dissatisfied, and they're both angry at each other because they're trying to make each other satisfy them. But they can't because they're in darkness. No matter what you do when you're in the dark, things don't change. And the road that you're on, the road that you're traveling gets worse and worse instead of better and better. Think about it. See, I've been involved in a lot of things in my life. I'm not a youngster. I've been around for a little while. I've been in business for a lot of years. And I've watched many people besides myself crash and burn. Start on a path that they think is going to do something good for them and ends up literally destroying them. Some of my favorite artists, y'all ain't going to like me now, but Michael Jackson was one of my favorite artists. At the time I wasn't saved. I was young, he was young. I was in the record industry, he was in the record industry. And I marveled at his creativity and his abilities. And I was impressed of how he could control a crowd and capture the attention of millions of people. But even more so than that, later on in life, I was floored at how darkness had overtaken his mind. I could not figure out in my mind why you would take a baby and hold it over a banister. Because you desperately desired attention. Because you needed that attention to satisfy something in you that couldn't be satisfied. And if you are honest with yourself and with the people that you look up to, if you have been following their lives that are in darkness, you'll find that their life is not getting better and better, but their life is getting worse and worse and worse. First is one tattoo, then it's 2, then it's 5, then their whole body is covered in tattoos, and then they almost look like a monster, and they're still not satisfied. Moral failure is a result of darkness. Look at our nation. The more we take God out of the equation, the worse we get. Sickness and diseases, uncurable. Sometimes I fear. I literally say, Lord, what is happening? That's how I talk to the Lord. Like, you got to talk to me. Don't leave me in the dark. I'm in the light. Illuminate my mind with the truth of what's going on. I told my wife, stop buying pork. Oh, wow. Find out what's going on. Disease in the pork right now is killing the pigs. Just in this year alone, 10% of all the pigs are dying just like that. One farmer, 30,000 piglets. Bam, woke up, they're all dead. The other farmer, 13,000. This is all just in the past 3 months. And of course the answer is, oh, it's just a disease for pigs, it doesn't affect you. Stop eating no pork chops. You know I love pork chops, but we holding up on it. Hold up.